Right, Noswaith, good evening. Welcome everyone to the first meeting of the Governance and Audit Committee. Before we start, can I just remind members who are in the chambers, if you could use your microphones, please, to speak. And for those members dialing in remotely, could you please mute your microphones and remember to turn on your cameras when you are speaking for the benefit of the broadcast. The proceedings will be recorded and will be broadcast live and may be available for training purposes within the council. So without further ado, could we move to item 1 on the agenda, please, which is the appointment of the lay chair of this committee. So could I invite nominations for the chair, please? Mr. Chapman, is there a second to that?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any other nominations? No. So could all those in favour of Mr. Chapman being appointed as chair please show? Yes, that's unanimous. So congratulations, Mr. Chapman. Can I invite you to take the chair for the rest of the meeting?
Thank you, and thank everyone for their support. And pleased to be gentle with me tonight. This is the first meeting, obviously, and obviously, I think we're all learning. Second item on the agenda, which isn't on the agenda, is the appointment of the vice chairman. Do we have nominations, please?
I'll nominate myself.
Mr. Reid, yes. Is that seconded? Thank you, Norma. Very kind. Any other nominations? There being no further nominations, can we put to the vote, please? Thank you. Thank you. That's carried. Item 2, then, on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? No, thank you. Oh, right, okay. Sorry, apologies.
So, one apology from Councillor Jordan.
Thank you. My apologies. Item 3 then, declaration of interest.
Can I also, I only came on just to make sure I was here for the vote in case I was...
Thank you, Councillor Horton. We can't hear you.
Sorry, is that
That's
better?
better, thank you.
Sorry, I came on just to make sure that if I was needed for the vote, I did pass some apologies on earlier in the week, so I will be stepping out in the next 5 to 10 minutes. I have a prior engagement I can't avoid. I'm sorry, I can't hear you.
If you could let us know when you leave the meeting, that would be great.
I will do, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, item 3 there with no declaration of interest. Item 4 on the agenda are minutes of the last meeting, 27th of January 2022. Someone prepared to move as correct record?
I'm prepared to move if I'm allowed to.
Yeah. Thank you. Someone second?
Chair, can I just ask the proprietor? Sorry, as we weren't at that meeting, it's very difficult to actually say they were a true and accurate record. So as lay members, new lay members, I don't think... I
fully appreciate that, and many of the elected members won't have been present at that meeting either. So it's here just as a formality. If you're happy to receive those as a record of the meeting, that's fine. But in future, obviously, they will be before you for accuracy as well.
Okay, on that basis, I'll second them.
Thank you, Norma. Everyone else, any comments on that? Everyone else prepared to accept? Thank you. Item 5 on the agenda then is the Audit Committee changes to the title and terms of reference. Mr. Price.
The report is before the committee. Sorry, Chair. The report is before you just for information purposes. This was a report that was taken to your predecessor committee prior to the local government elections, and it just sets out the legislative changes in terms of the title and constitution of this committee and your revised terms of reference now as set out in the legislation, which, as you will see, includes additional powers to look into the effectiveness of the council's complaints procedures and also a role in terms of the annual corporate self-assessment process, which is the next item on the agenda. So unless members have any questions, the report is just for information.
Thank you, Mr. Price. Are there any questions? Committee happy to accept the Audit Committee terms of reference? Thank you. Item 6 on the agenda, annual corporate self-assessment. Who's taking this?
Pass over to me, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much. Okay. Again, committee, this was originally on the work programme prior to the election to go through the committee for comment prior to going to Cabinet. Obviously, that's already happened, so this is coming here for information. So I'm just going to run through some key parts of the report, which is around our corporate self-assessment process as a result of the Local Government Elections Act. So as you will see from the terms of reference on the previous paper, this now forms part of your role to ensure that we have got appropriate measures in place to measure our performance, self-assessment processes, etc. So the report starts on page 29. So just quickly to go through some of the key elements there. So Local Government Elections Act requires local authorities to undertake a self-assessment of its governance and performance, and then to produce an annual self-assessment and undertake periodic reviews and provide external perspective on that performance. The annual self-assessment will be reported to the Governance and Audit Committee, and then we'll go through our processes within the organisation and ultimately then to the Auditor General and then our other regulatory bodies such as ESTIN and CAW. We have gone through a process to determine what is the best approach for the local authority. So we have undertaken an assessment of that and looked at 3 broad options. One of those was undertaking a standalone self-assessment. Second, one of those options was integrating into the annual governance statement. And then the third option was to integrate that into the annual corporate well-being report. So the decision was taken and went through Cabinet for option 3. So you'll receive that self-assessment provision as part of our annual report into performance. So we've incorporated into that. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. Any questions? Any comments on this paper?
Chair, I just have one comment that might be worth thinking about, really. I thought it was a good paper. I agree with the approach. I think it's the right approach. The question that was coming up in my mind when I was reading the paper was the how. And I think it would be worthwhile perhaps officers thinking about that for the future in terms of, you know, the committee needs that assurance, and for me, the how was missing. But I actually agree with the approach. I think it's totally appropriate.
Yep, thanks, Jay. Thanks very much for that. Obviously, this is a new process for us. We're going through a process at the moment of developing our corporate plan, and then new service plans will come out of that, and they will talk very much to the sort of transformational journey for the organisation, but also the ongoing delivery of services. We've got a suite of performance indicators at the moment that form part of that. So the first report we go through is very much going to be a backwards look at our assessment of previous activities. Newport's got a very strong track record within education of self-assessment. You know, we've gone through a series of Eston inspections where we've come out as good, and that's because of the understanding of the organisation and the knowledge of ourselves, really. So we need to replicate that within our more corporate performance measures, really looking at the quality aspects of those rather than the bean count inside of it as well. So thanks very much for the comment.
Are there any other comments? You note the proposal, subject, I believe, Mr Cornwall, to that comment. Happy to move this report? Yep. Everyone else in favour? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. I'll take that item. So, to introduce me, I'm Tracy McKim, the Head of People Policy and Transformation, and my colleague Paul Flint is here, who helped prepare the report and can take us through any questions. Also to note an apology, I see that the detailed risk report wasn't sent out in the pack, so members had that today. Having said that, on page 44 there is the summary version of that detail, and so therefore you've had the headline detail. And you'll also note that this is the corporate risk register for the end of December, which feels a little bit out of time now in May. What will happen with the committee in future is we report quarterly on the risk register. The council has a risk policy that requires that, and we pull together a summary of any changes for you. The role of Governance and Audit Committee is to be assured about the processes around risk rather than the detail and the score of any one risk. So whilst sometimes the sorts of questions that come up will be around details of a risk, it's really about assurance. Are we following the policy? Is the register sound? Is the logic sound? And it may be, Chair, that at some point in the future the committee would like perhaps for us to cover a little bit more in a presentation about risk and how we work with risk. So I appreciate you've got a lot here tonight. So the report starts on page 35 in the pack, as I'm sure you're on. 18 of the 47 risks, as you'll see, were recorded in the corporate risk register with significant impact. This is about impact on the council's ability to achieve its corporate objectives. And not to further complicate, we will be reviewing our corporate objectives because we'll now be going through a new corporate plan. So again, this is on the previous objectives there. Overall, there are 10 severe risk scores, so that's risk scores 15 to 25, 5 major risks, risk scores 7 to 14, and 2 moderate, and 1 low risk, a score 1 to 3, outlined in the report. So the process is that the risks are worked through with senior managers and in fact signed off by the exec board and reviewed by the exec board. Cabinet take a view on whether those scores are right and actions on the risk, and it's for the committee to be satisfied that those processes have been followed. Happy to take any questions on that, Chair.
Thank you. Are there any questions? Any comments? Can I just ask one, well, two actually. I think the training would be essential. I think it would be useful for us all new members, be it lay members or councillors, to have some training on the risk register and an understanding of that. And the second question I've got is, do you report by exception? So if you've got risk scores of higher than 15 to 25 and they're being managed, if they were red, green or amber, if they were green and they were being managed, but there are red risks, would you report only on the red risks or those which possibly are going into the red risk?
I guess yes, but so at the higher level risks we would always review every one and generally give an update on every one. When there's a change of direction of travel of the risk, we would generally report on that. At the lower end, of course, we would report by exception. And down below the risk register, we also have service area risks that follow a similar rhythm, if that answers the question. Thanks.
Thank you. That's very kind. You see the proposal there within the report. People happy to move that, to accept that? Yes, thank you. All in favour? Thank you. Item 8, Treasury Management Year-End Report.
Thank you, Chair.
Rob? Okay.
We'll take. I'll do the intro, and then my colleague Rob Green will go through a little bit of the detail. This is a fairly technical report, and just to set it in some sort of context, it comes here to the audit and governance. Your comments, etc., will be included then in the report that goes to the council, because Treasury matters are matters for the full council in terms of our borrowing activities and investments. And that is what this report concerns itself with. It's Treasury management. So it's the management of our cash resources. So essentially our borrowing requirements and activities and our investments of our surplus cash. And that's what our Treasury management strategy and the indicators control and manage. So we are required to report that to this committee and to the council twice a year, a midway report and then a final report as of the 31st of March. So this report concerns itself with the 31st of March. And essentially, and Rob will go through a little bit of the kind of detail, it's the situation that we found ourselves at on those activities at the 31st of March. We are in a different place to where we expected to be because of the last 2 years in terms of the management of our cash resources. And effectively, we've borrowed less than what we were expecting to be, and we are investing more than we were expected to be. And that's because we've had 2 years of significant underspending. So there's more cash that comes from that. And also we haven't delivered on our capital programme as fast as was originally planned, again because of the pandemic. So that means that we've had to slow down on our borrowing, but we still have a lot more cash than we expected to have. And that, I guess, is the absolute summary of our Treasury management position at the 31st of March. But Rob will just give you a little bit more detail now. So if Rob's there. Thanks, Rob.
Yeah, okay. Hopefully you can all hear me. Okay, so yeah, I'll just give a very brief overview of the sort of the main contents of the report. There is a lot of detail in the report. So obviously if there's questions or whatever required following that, then happy to take those either in the meeting or possibly outside if that would be of benefit. So yeah, just to give you an overview really of our final position as at 31st of March. So we still continue as the council to be a short-term investor and a short-term borrower in order to manage our day-to-day cash flows. And the sort of overriding strategy we adopt in terms of borrowing is we look to maximise our internal borrowing wherever possible, i.e. deferring our need to borrow externally whilst we've got those cash resources available. But ultimately, going forward, the need to borrow doesn't go away. So what we are anticipating over the longer term is that we will be required to undertake potentially a significant amount of external borrowing, mainly to fund our capital programme aspirations, which is significant, but also as a reflection of the reduced capacity to internally borrow as we use and consume those cash resources that we have at the moment, and we utilise our earmarked reserves, which effectively are cash backed. As Myron said, 2021-22 was not a normal year, nor was the year before, mainly due to the amount of government grant funding that we received late in the year as well. In a number of cases, they also issued that funding up front, so we were holding that cash in effect on behalf of Welsh Government until we utilised it in line with the schemes that it was awarded for. The other significant factor was the slippage in the capital programme. So again, huge aspirations on capital, but for a variety of reasons, some of which are linked directly to the pandemic, there was significant amount of slippage, which meant that we were effectively deferring the point at which we will incur that expenditure and therefore undertake external long-term borrowing to underpin that. So as a result, actually in the short term, we in essence have become a net investor. And as it says in the report in that summary paragraph, during the year, net borrowing decreased by 44.5 million from a starting point of 128.3. 33.5 of that 44.5 was actually due to an increase in the level of investments held. So that is a reflection of that grant funding that we received and the extra cash that we were holding within the authority. But as we've already mentioned, it's anticipated that level of investment will reduce throughout this financial year that we're now in, as an alternative to undertaking borrowing in the short term. And ultimately, we would look to reduce our investments down to as close as our £10 million minimum investment level that is set out in our treasury management strategy. The only other real point to bring your attention to in terms of the report is our compliance with treasury management indicators. So that's set out in Appendix B of the report. And I suppose it's just to give some assurance that whilst on the face of it, it may appear concerning that some of those indicators have not been complied with, that is mainly a reflection of our sort of unexpected position in terms of the level of investments that we're holding, and that is entirely a product of the circumstances and the context that we've been working within. So there is detail and there's explanation in the report as to why those indicators have been breached, but I suppose just to give reassurance that none of that gives any real reason to be concerned. They're indicators which are set at a point in time prior to the financial year based on what we assume will happen during the year. And as we said already a number of times, this last year was not a normal year. So have a look at those, look at the detail. If there are any sort of specific questions around them, happy to take them. But yeah, nothing there that should give any real cause for concern at this point. Okay, so that's all from me at this point, unless there's any questions.
Thank you, Robert. Are there any questions, Norma?
Thank you. First of all, to say, I think, even though it's quite a complicated issue, I thought the paper was really clear and I understood it very well, and I think the strategy was good, etc., etc. But my questions really relate to the future in terms of where are we going to be in terms of future capital programmes, and are there any risks that we see to service delivery going forward?
So if I start, and maybe Rob wants to add on. So where we're heading in the future. So the council has embarked over the last 5 years on a large commitment to its capital expenditure. So our commitment to borrow has grown quite high. Our actual borrowing is following slowly because we've got this internal borrowing, which has actually increased over the last 2 years. And we're obviously slow in delivering those projects, but we will get to that point. Also, as our reserves diminish over the next 10 to 15 years, because there's one single reserve in there, which is 40 million, that will be 15 years kind of getting down to zero, our commitment to borrow is going to be external borrowing, is going to be really high. So that's why we've now got a new indicator this year that the council agreed to, which is a limit on the commitment to borrow, irrespective of the timing of it, but to the commitments, because we need to stabilise that position now, because we're required to be prudent. Our borrowing is supposed to be prudent, affordable, and sustainable, and that is a judgment. That's not a black and white thing. That is a judgment. But we've seen a big increase in that commitment to borrow in the last 5 years, and we certainly couldn't afford for that to carry on at the same level of increase. So that needs to stabilise. We have £115 million worth of capital projects that are in the pipeline that are required to be delivered. So there's plenty to be going on in the meantime. But of course, the council will need to commit to more borrowing, but we just need to stabilise it a bit. Rob, is there anything else? Or is that about right?
I think the only thing I'd add is we're currently in the final year of our existing capital programme. So over the course of the next sort of six and a bit months, we'll be working on the new 5-year programme. So as part of that, we will need to take a view on what is affordable in terms of additional capital expenditure over and above what we've already got commitment to deliver. As part of the Treasury Management Capital Strategy for this financial year, we did sort of model different scenarios as to what may or may not be affordable in terms of new expenditure each year. So that's something that we will need to revisit in doing the next strategy and the new programme. But that did give, we did model, something that would give capacity to undertake additional expenditure, but at an affordable and prudent level. So I think that the next major update on that will be when we bring the new strategy to the committee for consideration. But yeah, we are modelling that in terms of ensuring over the next 5 years how that will look.
Are there any other questions? Councillor Mogford.
Yes, thank you, Chair. My question is to Rob. It's really about terminology and clarification, Rob. When you use the word government, can we assume that you are referring to Welsh Government most of the time, if not all of the time?
Yeah, so when I was talking then, I was talking about Welsh Government. We do receive grants from other aspects of government, UK government, but in this instance, it is almost all entirely Welsh Government, yeah.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Can I just ask one question? With the interest rate rises currently, is that going to affect your borrowing and the amount of capital schemes you're going to be undertaking in the future?
So in terms of the interest rates, then that is a ongoing discussion now with our advisors. So the strategy does allow us to borrow in need of that cash if we want to jump in quicker than we need to. At the moment, the advice that we're getting is that whilst rates are going up slowly, they will likely fall back. So if we can hang on for another 12, 18 months, that would be a good thing. Our loan book is also fixed term loans with the PWLB. The advice there has also been that we should have a little amount of variable short-term loans as well that we recycle. Those tend to be cheaper, so we'll hopefully avoid those big increases by taking up that share first and hoping that the long-term stuff comes down then.
Thank you. Any comments? You see the proposal, note the contents of the Treasury Management activities period 2021-22 and subject, obviously, the comments just made. Everyone happy with that? Thank you. Item 9, the Newport Annual Audit Summary. Gareth.
Yeah, thank you, Chair, and good evening, everyone, and nice to meet all the new members this evening. Just to introduce myself, my name is Gareth Lucy. I'm the Financial Audit Manager at Audit Wales with responsibility for Newport City Council. So we've got two papers on the agenda tonight. This is the first one, which is our Annual Audit Summary. So just to provide a bit of context for newer members, effectively, as an organisation, we have a statutory responsibility to provide an annual audit letter to the council each year, summarising the results of our financial audit work. So that's the work over the council's financial statements. And also we had a separate responsibility in our performance audit section to provide an annual improvement report. So that sort of shows details of our work that's carried out over the council's use of resources, so getting assurance over their economy, effectiveness and efficiency there. Due to various legislation changes, some of those requirements changed. So effectively, we've now combined those two documents together into this annual audit summary. So all this does is provide a summary of our financial audit and performance audit work that we've performed over the past year. It was due to go to the March committee meeting, which unfortunately was cancelled. So it's been brought forward now into this meeting agenda. Ultimately, there's not a huge amount for me to say on top of what's already in the paper. As I've set out, it really just sets out a brief summary of the work that we've performed over the year. So from page 75 of your packs, that gives a brief summary of the work that we performed in terms of financial accounts audit and the findings we came up with there. And then page 76 onwards sets out some of the various strands of our performance audit work. So that includes local work that we've carried out within Newport City Council, some of our national local government studies that will look at the local government sector more widely, and also some of the liaison that we carry out with other inspectorates such as Care Inspectorate Wales and Estin to liaise with them and also bring their findings into this summary as well. So ultimately, there's nothing new in this paper. This is a summary of work that's already been carried out and performed over 2021. So the only recommendation here is for committee members to note and consider the report. But I can hand over to you, Chair, and happy to take any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Gareth. It's always a pleasure to have someone from Audit Wales here to present their report, so thank you very much for that. Any questions? Councillor Cox.
Yeah, I was struck by the population statistics, a 34% increase in the over 65s. And I mean, is that kind of rise in the demographics actually already accounted for in council planning? Because previous documents seem to suggest that, you know, social services, for example, is under extreme pressure.
In terms of a response, I probably have to her in terms of the detail in terms of council planning. So I'm not sure if anyone from the council might be able to take on that question.
Yeah, Chair, happy to respond to that. That's a very good question, Councillor Cox. So the Newport is I wouldn't say unique, but you know, we're one of very few local authorities that's actually created real sort of data analytics capacity. So we've got something called Newport Intelligence Hub within the local authority, and that brings together quite a lot of data streams so that we can look at forward projection. Interestingly enough, it's on Audit Wales' work programme of pieces of work to look at as well, about actually becoming a data-embedded and data-led organisation. So we look at population projections when we're doing all our financial planning around, and Newport is quite unique. We've got a growing children population and a growing over 65 population as well, in amongst a very quickly growing population. So there's a range of challenges there, but we obviously take those into consideration. And because of the way budgets are, and have been over a number of years, you obviously have to make some prioritisation of that. So it doesn't necessarily flow that you will make a proportionately increase in a budget associated with those figures. But we do take it into consideration.
Is that okay, Councillor Cox? Yeah. Any other questions? Any comments? You see the proposal to note the contents of the report. Everyone happy with that? Please show. Thank you. Item number 10 is the Audit Wales Annual Audit Plan 2022. Is that you, Gareth?
It is, yeah. Thank you, Chair. So following on swiftly on the heels of that, this is our audit plan for 2022. So again, for context, this is a standard document that we present to the Governance and Audit Committee each year around this time of year, setting out our plans for the year ahead. You'll note on the cover of the report on page 89, it refers to Newport City Council and Newport City Council Group. That's because from a financial accounts perspective, the council presents group accounts, which incorporates Newport Transport Limited, Newport Bus, which is a wholly owned subsidiary of the council, and so that's brought into the council's accounts each year. I probably won't propose to run through the document too much in detail, but I'll just flag up some of the key headlines, if that's okay, for members to be aware of as you read through the document. From page 92 onwards, at the start of the report, there's a brief summary of the Auditor General's duties in terms of his statutory audit duties over the council. And then really the report itself, the body of the report, is split up into two main sections, one looking at our financial audit work, our accounts work, and one looking at our performance audit programme. So at the bottom of page 92, you'll see it refers to our audit of financial statements work and summarises the work that we're carrying out there. So this explains our work over the financial statements of the council each year. And early on, we just summarised that our work doesn't involve a 100% check over every single transaction that the council undertakes. Our work is performed on a sample basis and is therefore driven by risk. And we also introduced the concept of materiality as part of that, because we confirm that the accounts are materially true and fair in terms of how they're stated. So we perform our work to a certain level. So our work is driven by risk, and you'll see from page 94 onwards, you'll see a detailed table there setting out the audit risks that we've identified through our planning work. Now, we set these out for every single organisation that we audit. There's nothing particularly unusual or untoward in terms of the risks that you see here. Many of the risks that you see in this table will actually be raised for any of the 22 local authorities across Wales, because you'll see issues such as the impact of COVID-19, for example. So there's certain technical matters that arise from that. We're also living at the moment in times of high inflation, particularly in the building trade, which leads to questions about asset valuations as well. And that's something that we're currently working with the council on. You'll see that flagged up in our audit risk table. And finally, in that table, we flag up related parties, which again is always an area of risk in terms of any organisations that may be linked to the council, its officers or its members. We just need to ensure that those are properly disclosed each year. It's a key area of focus for us. So ultimately, that just summarises our planning work from the audit to date. We'll come on a little later then in terms of our timetable of our work and what that will entail. The second section then, page 97 onwards, looks at our performance audit programme. So this is the work that we perform throughout the year to gain assurance that the council's use of resources is economic, effective and efficient. So this can be wider in terms of scope, could look really theoretically at any area that could be agreed. And ultimately, our work plan is determined after a period of consultation. We consult with key officers and the Cabinet. We consult with other inspectorates. We carry out a public consultation, and we also discuss this internally within our audit team and wider within Audit Wales as well. And ultimately, that culminates in our proposed programme of work, which you'll see on page 98. And that's summarised for you in the table there. You'll see that there's a couple of areas still to be confirmed within that table. There's still an element of consultation that is in the period of being closed down now, and that relates to a second area of thematic review that will be performed across the 22 local authorities in Wales. And also, an element of our local audit work where we've decided to leave open at the moment, given that we are in an environment of quite high change at the moment. It seemed prudent really to keep an element of our local audit work open for the time being, so we can discuss with management and work out how to take that forward most appropriately during the year, as opposed to committing ourselves to something at this point. Moving on from there, in terms of two further key headlines then, page 99 onwards sets out our fee. That's set out on page 100. You'll see a table there, Exhibit 3, page 100 of your packs. We do flag up a slight increase in our proposed audit fee this year. Our fees have remained stable since 2016, but ultimately increased cost pressures, such as elements like the national insurance increase, and also some technical developments, such as increased audit quality requirements that we have to staff and resource, means that unfortunately we have had to increase our fees slightly this year, and you'll see that reflected there. It's a proposal at this stage. The fee that's charged to the council reflects the work that's actually performed. So if there are any changes to that proposal in due course, then obviously members will be kept informed. But at this stage, it's an estimate of what we perceive that cost to be during the year. Page 101 just sets out details of our audit team. Contact details are there for if anyone needs to get in touch with us at all. For any members who have been on the committee pre the election period, you'll note a change to the engagement director. Matthew Edwards is now stepping in as engagement director to take the place of Anthony Veal, who was in place for a number of years. And also Timothy Buckle has now become the audit manager for our performance audit area of work. I previously covered both financial and performance audit areas. I'm now stepping back just on the financial audit side, but our details are there for information. And then the final area I just wanted to cover off is our audit timetable, which is summarised on page 102 of your packs. Just summarises at a high level how we perceive our work to be performed during the year. In terms of our performance audit programme, that'll just be discussed locally with officers throughout the year and scheduled and scoped appropriately as that progresses. Our financial audit work over the accounts is obviously more prescriptive. On that basis, you'll see we've outlined a rough timetable there of between July and October 2022 this year. We set out a footnote there, effectively the statutory timetable for auditing the accounts each year in local government is July of each financial year, following the end of each financial year. But obviously, given the COVID-19 pandemic, the issues that's created in terms of being able to deliver work quickly, the Welsh Government has issued flexibilities in terms of that timetable. So they've set out an expectation that they would like all councils to have their accounts audited by the end of November each year. So ultimately, by setting out a timetable at this stage that we'd hope to get things done by the end of October, that would comfortably meet that timetable. So we've been liaising with management and officers in the finance team to agree and set that timetable, and that will be our initial expectation of when that work would be complete. So ultimately, Chair, I think that's a quick run through of our audit plan. Again, happy to take any questions that members may have.
Thank you, Gareth. Are there any questions? Any comments? Happy to note the report. Please show. Thank you. Thank you, Gareth. Item 11, internal audit, progress against audit plan 2021-22. Andrew.
Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, Chair. Good afternoon, members. My name is Andrew Wathen. I am the Chief Internal Auditor here at Newport City Council, and I have my colleague with me, Donna Palmer, who's one of the audit managers on the team. So this report is a carryover from the previous committee meeting. And Chair, if you're happy, I'll just give you a brief overview of this one, because most of the information and the detail will be picked up in the annual report, which is ultimately the Q4 report. So I'll just give a quick overview if you're happy. So in terms of Q3, this will be one of the regular reports that I bring into this committee to give you assurance as committee members of Governance and Audit Committee that there are appropriate internal controls in place, governance arrangements and risk management processes in the systems and sites operated across the whole organisation. So we do that by reporting the opinions which we issue from the audit work which we undertake on a regular basis. The second part of the report is to inform members of the performance of the team and to make sure that I am accountable to you and we are working and progressing against the plan as expected. So we'll be talking about the assurance we can give and the performance of the team on a quarterly basis. So this relates to Q3 for 2021-22. If I could just skip directly to the appendices, Chair, because that will give more information about how we operate. And this is the main difference between the Q3 report and the annual report. The quarter reports 1, 2 and 3 will be on a quarter-by-quarter basis and a year-by-year comparison, whereas the annual report is just on an annual basis. But the annual report will pick up the Q4 data. So on Appendix A, we have the performance of the team, and we're looking at the second table, 21-22, and for Q3, we had a target of 50% and we achieved 42%, mainly due to lack of resources within the team covering a long-term sickness. And we have a number of other performance indicators. The key ones for me really are the issue of draft reports, which we're issuing within 6 days against a target of 10, and issuing final reports within 3 days against a target of 5. In terms of the assurance that we're giving at the end of the third quarter, end of December, that's laid out in Appendix B, where we identify that there have been 6 good opinions issued, 11 reasonable opinion issues, 1 unsatisfactory. There were 5 unqualified, and that relates to grant claim work which we did in the year. Then, Chair, I've set out in the table the actual individual jobs, the audit jobs which we've undertaken doing up to Q3, with a corresponding opinion on the right-hand side. So outlining individual jobs which warranted a good, reasonable and unsatisfactory audit opinion during the year. Moving on to non-opinion work, where we give financial advice across all services within the organisation. And we also provide financial regulations training, where the team deliver training to service managers to make sure that there is sound financial stewardship across the organisation, and this increases the awareness of compliance with financial regulations and contract standing orders. You notice within that non-opinion work as well, Chair, that we do cover the annual governance statement. I've included in the report the definitions of our opinions, which is in Appendix D, and also a definition of what unqualified and qualified means for some new members. Happy to take questions, Chair.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions? Norma.
Thank you, Chair. It was in relation to paragraph 16, where it says 13 of the 14 audit reviews which are in draft as at 31st of the 3rd, 21 have now been finalised. So I just happened, that seems a long time ago now, 21. I was just wondering, what about the other one that's not been finalised? What are the issues with it?
Thank you, Member. We have a process which we undertake in terms of the issuing of draft reports, and internal audit is not an exact science, so there's no exact cut-off at the year end. So when we have some reports as at the 31st of March 21, which were in draft, then we would hope to finalise most of those by the first quarter, by the end of the first quarter. Inevitably, there are one or two which take a bit longer to finalise. We're in negotiations with the service managers, and they can provide us with additional information during that time to maybe help us finalise that report. In terms of the detail of that one, I can give that information to you next time, Chair.
Norman, anything?
Yeah, that's fine.
Are there any other questions? Can I pose two questions, Andrew? The first one's in regard to Appendix A, which is the proportion of planned audits complete. And as you said, there was only 42% completed, presumably because of sickness and that. Does the audit team intend to catch up as much as it can, or are those proposed audits pushed over into the next financial year?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we will endeavour to catch up. We go through a pretty rigorous planning process at the end of the first financial year, beginning of the new financial year, and we'll take into consideration all the jobs which we didn't do in that one financial year. We will risk assess them against our strategic plan and have a discussion with the corporate management team to see if they are still prioritised moving forward. So the majority will be carried forward. There might be one or two which fall off and go back into our audit cycle, but we do go through quite a rigorous risk assessment in order to determine which ones to carry forward. Yeah.
Thank you. And I've got a second question on Appendix B, which is page 114. You've got city services there, housing benefits, which is an opinion of unsatisfactory. Can you just explain what the process is? Because presumably there are recommendations which come out of your audit report for that. And how soon are they sort of re-inspected to try and overcome that unsatisfactory criteria?
Thank you, Chair. We issue an audit report based on the strengths and weaknesses that we identified during the course of our audit work. If you have more strengths, then you have a more favourable audit opinion. In this circumstance, there were probably more weaknesses than strengths, which led to an unfavourable audit opinion. We work together with the service managers. They generally agree the issues which we've identified and the weaknesses which we've identified, and they put together an action plan. So that is formed with management actions. So we've moved away from internal audit recommendations, and we get the managers to agree what actions they will take in order to improve their particular systems moving forward. And that's worked well over the last few years. It takes some, gets some ownership in terms of the actual service area, and they're the experts in their field. So we've agreed the particular weakness, and the service manager will then agree on action moving forward. We as a team then will oversee that action, and if we're comfortable with it, we'll include it in the action plan. If we're not comfortable that it addresses a particular issue, then we will prefer the audit comment in the action plan, which does need to be addressed. We give the manager a timescale, and it depends on the weakness that's identified. It could be a quick win, it could be easily achievable, they might need extra staffing or extra resources, which could take a bit longer to implement. So between us, we would agree a reasonable timescale for implementation. But my commitment to Governance and Audit Committee is that as an audit team, we will go back in and audit that unsatisfactory audit opinion within a 12-month period to make sure that those recommendations, those agreed management actions, have been implemented. In most cases, they would be an improved audit opinion. If the audit opinion is not improved, and it carries a second consecutive unfavourable opinion, unsatisfactory or even unsound opinion, then I will be bringing that to the information of this committee and advising to call in the respective head of service to be accountable to yourselves as members of this committee as to why no improvements were made. So generally within a 12-month period we will be reporting back to this committee on improvements that we would expect.
Thank you, Andrew. That answered all my questions. Councillor Cox.
Can I ask, I mean, 12 months does appear quite a long time, depending on what the issue is. I mean, if for example, and maybe this wasn't the case, if the issues that you identified were impacting, for example, on the receipt of housing benefit by recipients, 12 months would be a tremendously long amount of time. I mean, if there was an issue like that, presumably it's possible to implement action on a sort of, a prompter scale.
Thank you. I think that's a fair question. Yeah, we would like actions taken immediately or as promptly as possible. Sometimes the service area needs to bring in extra resources or change a system sometimes to make sure there's an improvement in the control environment. When we report, we discuss the draft report with the service manager, but then when we finalise the report, that does go to the head of service. So the head of service will be aware of the action plan which we've agreed, and we prioritise the actions, the management actions, into red, amber or green. So if there's a red risk in there, that gets flagged up to a head of service. Head of service takes that as a priority to implement sooner rather than later. But reporting back does take some time because we have to build in the resources to do that. We either take something out of our plan to go back and do the follow-up, or we have to build it into the following year's audit plan.
Can I just do a follow-up from that? Clearly, if there's that much concern from elected representatives of this authority, if there was an issue with housing benefits, is it possible for us as an audit committee to actually suggest that there's a review done after sort of 3 months or 6 months? Because if it's, if there's a delay in housing benefit payments, then it has a huge impact on residents and constituents of the authority. And given the current climate of increased inflation, money's not about in the world. Is it possible, and I don't know the answer, is it possible for us to say, look, Andrew, can you look at this after 3 months, or could you just give us an update after 3 or 6 months?
Absolutely, Chair. Yeah. There's a short answer. Yes. Just to reassure members, the housing benefits review that which we've undertaken is in two parts. There's obviously the issuing of the housing benefit monies to benefit people within the community, but there's a housing element as well. And it's more on the housing element which we had concerns around.
You know, just trying to reassure the councillor really to say, look, you know, if he considers 12 months to be a long time, can we just sort of, as a committee, sort of say, look, can you just give us a quick review or an update after sort of 3 months? That's great.
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Andrew. Any comments? You see the proposal that we note the Council's governance internal audit progress against audit plan. Everyone happy with that? Prepared to move that? Thank you. Item 12 on the agenda, the internal audit charter revised and updated. Is that you, Andrew, again?
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Andrew Wathen, Chief Internal Auditor. So this is the internal audit charter, which is mainly an internal document, and it's for information more so. Previous audit committee has approved this internal audit charter, and I'm bringing it to your attention this evening because we've revised it to take account of the update in the public sector internal audit standards and to take account of the restructuring within the organisation in terms of referral to the Governance and Audit Committee and the Strategic Directors and Heads of Service. This is good practice to bring to your attention. It sets out how the internal audit team works, how it operates, how it develops relationships, how it reports its findings, how it quality assures the work that we undertake, and it is compliant with the public sector internal audit standards. So happy to take any questions, Chair.
Thank you. I'm sure everyone's read it. Any questions?
Thank you, Chair. I have a couple of comments and suggestions, really. In the charter, in paragraph 2.7, the last bullet point refers to profitability. I'm just checking everyone's got that. The last bullet point on paragraph 2.7. The last.
Sorry, Chair. Can you tell me where that is, please?
Is it top of page 1? Is it 127? It's the opportunities for improving management, control, profitability.
Management. I can't see.
Control and profitability.
Profitability and the council's image may be identified during audit. I just wondered whether we should refer to value for money there, as well as profitability, because they are different things, aren't they?
Yes, Chair, we can certainly take that on board. We do have an eye for value for money when we're undertaking our work. We do make sure that everything is done effective, the money is spent effectively, efficiently and economically. But value for money studies are actually undertaken specifically by the external auditor. But we will have an eye on making sure that the public money is spent effectively and efficiently.
If you could note that comment, Andrew, if you could.
We'll certainly take that on board.
Thank you. Norma?
Okay. And there's just two more comments, Chair, if I may. On paragraph 2.8, the thing that struck me was, what about contracted out work? Or even contractors, having access to those, really? Because I don't think they were listed.
Chair, do you mean the contracted audit work or contractors to the organisation?
Well, it talks about you having unrestricted access to the Governance and Audit Committee, the Chief Executive, the leader, individual chief officers and all authority employees. So I was just thinking, what about work that we contract out? Should that be there?
In terms of organisations that we deal with, or audit work which we contract out?
I think, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's organisations who do work for the council on behalf of the council.
Yes, that's what I'm thinking of. Should you not have unrestricted access to them?
In an ideal world, yes. It doesn't always happen that way, and we have to make sure we've got appropriate governance arrangements in place with those partners that we deal with. It's not written into our charter because we tend to just look at all services provided by the organisation, more so than external organisations.
So let me be clear. So are we saying in response it's not really feasible to put that in the charter?
Not for the work and the remit that we have as internal auditors.
Right. Okay. And the other is a minor thing. I just wondered, in paragraph 2/10, line 4, when you talk about strategic management, you mean the strategic management team? Sorry, it's a really petty point, but it looks as if there was a word missing there.
Chair, if there is, we'll sort that out and we'll take that on board.
I think it could be teams missing.
Yeah.
We'll sort that out. Chair.
Yeah, okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any other questions? Any comments? You see the reports to be noted and approved by the Council's Governance Committee, subject to the comments made. Everyone in favour? Thank you. Item 13, Annual Governance Statement, Draft Statement.
Thank you, Chair. Andrew Wathen, Chief Internal Auditor. Third report. So this is the Annual Governance Statement 21-22, which is draft, and has been brought to the attention of Governance and Audit Committee to make sure that you're happy with it as members. It is draft. It will feed into the draft set of accounts, which Myrian and Rob will be putting together. This is quite a lengthy document, but it sets out the Council's compliance with its own Code of Corporate Governance, which was approved by Cabinet last year. It details the governance principles, the 7 principles for good governance, which is determined by UK government, SIPFA and SOLIS within the UK, and sets out how the organisation in 21-22 has complied with its own code of governance. There are there's some information, there's some data around comparisons of year on year, but it is quite a detailed document, Chair, and I don't intend to go through it in detail. No major issues, as far as I'm concerned, in terms of governance arrangements across the organisation for 21-22, and we will be updating the action plan further in the next month or so. But happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions? Are there any? Oh, Councillor Cox. Can you put your microphone? Thank you.
There's something that puzzled me about this. I think it's page 144, and it's got Equalities Impact Assessment, and that actually states that there's no need for an Equalities Impact Assessment because this relates to audit. I think it's point 27 on page 144. Yet the whole document is just ridden with issues where there are massive equality issues. You know, the 7 principles that you've mentioned already, or it talks about effective public engagement, bringing stakeholders on board. If we look at the charter, on page 148, 149, it talks about there's responsibility within the framework to look at systems of culture and values. I mean, if on page 150, it talks about ensuring openness and stakeholder engagement, developing the capabilities of leadership, developing individuals in the organisation. And it just struck me that all of those have massive issues relating to them under the Equalities Act, yet it's stated that apparently equality plays no part in the Charter or in the audit of the Charter.
Okay, thank you. Thanks for the question. It's An interesting question. This information is gathered from and collated from all other aspects of the organisation. So from council reports, committee reports, reports have gone through scrutiny, etc. So this is just an overview of that situation. If that is a concern, we followed a standard template in terms of the reporting process. We will look at that and reflect on it, and if it is required, we'll build it in.
Cox. I think, obviously the proposal is to provide appropriate comments to, presumably this will go to council, will it, with the annual statement accounts?
Goes through Cabinet first.
Cabinet
and then
first,
council.
yeah. Okay. But with those comments taken on board, then you can look at it at, for next year's one in reality, or whether it actually needs to be adapted for this year, that the equalities legislation and implications need to be taken into account.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair.
Thank you. Any other questions? Any comments?
Sorry, Chair, I think I just had a brief one, really, and it was in section 5, where there's reference to the Fairness Commission. And I think the heading, I'm trying to find it now, I think it was talking about integrity, and I thought and it's picking up on the member to my left's point, really. I thought the Fairness Commission, to me, appeared to be more about equality than integrity, and I just wondered whether it was in the right section.
Again, Chair, we'll look at that and we'll reflect on it, and if required, we'll change.
Thanks. Yeah, it's a really interesting point. I think the Fairness Commission sits across all such things. The Fairness Commission is an independent organisation to the council, but the council supports. I think only 1 or 2 exist in Wales, and it is about, I'm going to do this, pillars of fairness. They have their own pillars of fairness that they've agreed with us. So that is partly about equality, it's partly about integrity and transparency, and there are many other elements to fairness. So in some ways, you could almost put it anywhere in that report. I probably suggest, and we can talk outside of this about it, that we leave it there, but perhaps we reference that and we say that it applies to other areas. Thank you, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. Okay. If there are no other comments, you see the proposal to review the draft annual governance statement, which we've done, provide appropriate comments, which hopefully have been collected and collated before recommended its presentation alongside the annual statement of accounts 2021-22 to Cabinet. I think that's, so we're happy with that. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Item 14, the draft internal audit annual plan. I don't want to name again because we know you are. Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, Chairman. So this is the draft internal audit plan for 2022-23. Sets out the workload of my team, what we're going to cover within the year in order to provide you with assurance of an adequacy in terms of the internal control environment, governance arrangements and risk management processes that are in place across the whole organisation. So, as I mentioned earlier, in terms of the plan itself, we start off with a very long list of what we could potentially audit in a particular year. And we prioritise that, we risk assess that, and bring it down to a much more workable list. We then take that to CMT, to directors and heads of service, to see if there's any areas where they would like us to look at, any areas where they want us to prioritise, with internal audit being a fresh pair of eyes for them or an extra pair of eyes. So we have that conversation, we prioritise, we risk assess, and we take into account a whole load of factors in terms of when was it last audited, with any issues picked up in previous audits, any issues picked up corporately or wider than that in terms of concerns about particular areas, any topical issues coming from the internal audit information we get UK-wide, and what are the hot topics for internal audit in a particular year. Has there been any significant changes to the system or to personnel? And we bring all that together and provide a list of jobs which we would undertake. We'd also take into account, as the Chair alluded to earlier, any jobs which weren't undertaken in the previous financial year, and we would re-risk assess those to see if they fell into the following year's audit work. Once we've got our manageable list, we then have to balance that with our resources, and within the team we have 7.5 full-time equivalent staff, which is currently running at 5.5 due to current vacancies and long-term sickness. So based on that plan and what we know at the moment, the total available days amounts to just shy of 1,400 days to undertake audits. Less non-productive days leaves us with 998 available days to undertake the audits. So we then try and make sure that each service area is covered during the year, and that's set out in one of the appendix, which I'll come to in a moment. So we try and give everybody a fair share of auditing across all service areas. As I said, we do take into account comments and work discussions from heads of service to fine-tune our audit work. We also take into account some days for special investigations where we and the team might get involved with allegations of fraud or corruption, misappropriation, where we have to undertake investigations which are outside of our plan. So we do need to allocate some time for that so it doesn't impact on what we've actually recorded within the plan. Just to make members aware that the 0.5 is me. I'm the 0.5 full-time equivalent because in terms of collaboration, I'm also the Chief Auditor at Monmouthshire. We need to make sure we're independent when we're undertaking our work, and there's a paragraph there about how we demonstrate we're independent. Again, I've set out the definitions of the audit opinions which we use, because we're talking about the level of assurance which we're trying to gain from the reviews which we undertake, identifying both strengths and weaknesses. So overall for 22-23, we have 62 audit opinion jobs, 22 non-opinion jobs, and plus 5 grant claims, which we get involved with providing a certificate for the funding organisation. The team itself comprises of mainly professional staff who are either qualified or part qualified with a range of qualifications, and we continue to support professional development through the year to make sure we're up to speed with audit initiatives and we are auditing in a modern way. We provide training across the organisation in terms of awareness for financial regulations, contract standing orders, but also we coordinate the training for other audit teams across South Wales via the South Wales Chief Auditors Group, which we try and make sure that we bring in specialist knowledge to make sure our auditors are up to speed with current initiatives. And we started that initiative some years ago. It's very positive. It's very well thought of amongst my colleague chief auditors across Wales and further afield, because we bring the trainer to us locally as opposed to sending our staff out to Birmingham, London, etc. So we try and keep the cost to a minimum. As I mentioned, we try and cover all service areas across the organisation, and we try and spread the audit work out as much as we can. Some years that's more than others, depends on the priorities of the work which we're undertaking. So in terms of the actual plan, Chair, that's laid out in Appendix 1, where we've summarised where we intend spending our audit days, our operational audit days, across the various service areas. And just to make you aware, this is based on the old head of service structure. Once the new structure has been confirmed, then we'll adjust the audit plan accordingly and bring that back to a committee for your attention. So at the moment, we are over-planned, stroke under-resourced by 149 days. So the plan does need further refining and retuning to bring that into equilibrium. In terms of the draft audit plan itself on Appendix 2, that is not quite our long list. It is a long list, but there is a longer list in terms of our strategic plan, but that gives members an idea of what work we've covered over the years, or what work we could cover. And in the right-hand column where it says number of days, that's the job which we intend undertaking in 22-23. As you go through, it's based on service area. There's a total per service area. As you can see, we're covering all service areas within the organisation. And the summary at the end just confirms what I just mentioned in terms of the over-planning stroke under-resourced by 149 days. So there is a bit of detail in that, Chair. I appreciate that, but I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Tom.
Can I just ask, on the special investigations, the number of days that you've allocated for that, is that typical of what you've used in previous years?
It's the allocation we've used in previous years. It does vary because you can't tell when you're going to get an allegation in, but it's slightly less than that, the actual, in probably the last 2 or 3 years.
Norma?
Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the Chief Auditor for this plan. I don't think, as a member, I'm in a position to sort of question the priorities and that they've been discussed with the heads of service, etc., and, you know, the days allocated accordingly. But what does worry me, as a member of this committee, is paragraph 32, where it is said that following discussions with the heads of service, it's quite clear that we haven't got the resource for the coverage, this audit coverage of this needed. And that, to me, is a risk. It's a risk to the council, to the authority. And to what extent has that risk been assessed?
Thank you. Yeah. In the past, we've brought in additional audit work. So we liaise with specific internal audit companies, organisations, who become our external internal auditors, basically. We've engaged with a company for the last 2 years, and for this particular year, we've brought in additional days as an additional internal audit resource to supplement the plan.
So are we saying for this current year that we will be bringing in additional resources?
Yes, we will, yeah.
And
yeah.
you'll have sufficient to cover all the areas you consider at risk or need to be looked at?
There does need to be further refining, but we'll bring it closer to the resources we've got available for the whole year, yes.
Are there any other questions? Can I just put a couple of... Just picking up that one point. If the authority is buying in internal audit support from external means, is that value for money in reality, or would it be easier to employ a member of staff internally? And I know budgets are tight everywhere across ground. I'm sure colleagues around the room will say, well, we need extra people to do X, Y, and Z. And it would have to be assessed in the budget round for bids or whatever. But if there is that gap in service provision from audit, which again is very important, and what we can't let you do is overcommit, the only question I would pose is there an opportunity to bid for extra funding internally to strengthen your team going forward, rather than having them to buy it in on a, you know, if it's happened every year, then someone should be hopefully saying, you know, it's costing us this much. It'd be cheaper to have someone inside because they could do a lot more. Just a question following up from what Norma said, really.
Thank you, Chair. I'm sure Marion will come in and finish my the answer to the question. But yes, very good point. We've tried to... We've advertised the post several times, but unfortunately we've been unsuccessful. We do go out and get quotes for the work coming in, and we make sure that that kind of doesn't exceed the budget we've got available in terms of the vacancy. In terms of additional internal funding, I'm not aware we can go down that road, but I'm sure Maya will tell me differently. But we do have that conversation every year with Myron about the plan, the resources we've got available, and the work that we do need to do.
Yeah, only a comment from me. So we do buy in external help to fill in existing vacancies as opposed to additional work. So therefore, the funding for those is already within the base budgets because they're vacancies. Does it provide value for money? Well, in the sense of it costs you more money to bring in external resources compared to employment, but we do struggle to recruit. Part of that problem is that it is a small team. That's often is not attractive to people who want scope, etc. So that's something that we are looking at, but inevitably there is a certain funded level of resource that we have for the internal audit function within the organisation, and therefore we do need to fit the plan to the available resources, which does include getting in external help where we have gaps, so that we can, minimise the impact of those gaps. And that's why there's always a need for prioritisation. It's a shame in some respects because that assurance is helpful, it's useful. But Andrew gives an independent assessment each year of the kind of the state of the nation, as it were, in terms of the control environment, and the amount of work that we are able to do does provide Andrew with sufficient coverage to be able to give a view. Now, obviously, that's the minimum that we need, and just to give assurances to you, we achieve that. But yes, we do have to prioritise down to what we have.
If there was a view from this audit committee that there wasn't sufficient resource put in and it was a risk to the council, then surely that would be taken back, I assume, to the executive and to the chief officers, because what we can't allow is this authority to be at a big risk, whilst Andrew will do his very best to manage that. But if we as a committee say, look, there's an issue here, I assume that will be taken into consideration somewhere or other in a different place.
Absolutely. So, if you were receiving lots of Andrew's monitoring reports that were showing a lot of unsound and unsatisfactory audits and other governance issues, then alarm bells would start to ring with you. You should, at that point, be sort of flagging that up so that can be taken forward. But there needs to be a good reason, I would suggest, for it to be a strong one at this point, yeah.
I understand that. Just another couple of points. The issue around housing benefits, which was picked up in a previous report, obviously isn't flagged in this report as any days to be allocated to it. It's empty at the moment. It's on page 195. So I assume if you couldn't do that review, would there be some days allocated to that, Andrew, or not?
Chair, yeah, there's been a bit of change due to the restructure. So housing benefits is actually in 189, and we've got 12 days in for that. Sorry, yeah, we'll change that. So, yeah, it's come out of customer. Sorry. Still within customer services, but it now falls within finance. So
that's okay.
It's in there twice, but there's only one set of figures in terms of days, and that's a follow-up audit. So
no, that's okay.
My mistake, Chair.
No, that's okay.
I'll rectify.
And the other question I've got is, clearly there are some functions within this within the organisation that have never been audited. The one I was just looking at quite quickly was you're auditing 21st Century School Capital Programme, but you're not auditing the school reorganisation programme, because obviously one goes with the other in some respects, if you're going to amalgamate schools or whatever. And I understand, obviously, it's a negotiation, isn't it, between the head of service and the director and yourselves as to what you do. But you've got some here from presumably when this came into being, which is something like 2004, 2005, I think is the mayoral one, which it was last done. But they've never, ever, some of these functions have never, ever been dealt with. And I'm just a little bit concerned because, again, there's some about funding in sort of social services. You're looking at one area, like residential care provider payments, but you've never looked at supported living provider payments. And I'm just wondering what the rationale is around that. Is that governed and directed by the director, or is it there's no issues in those areas? I'm just posing a question.
I think it's a very fair question, Chair. Yeah, I mean, that does come through our risk assessment in terms of our determining what jobs we put in the plan. If we haven't identified any issues, if there is no significant concerns being raised corporately about those particular areas, if the heads of service are not telling us that they've got a bit of an issue there, which we may not know about, then it kind of goes in the audit cycle, goes in our strategic plan, and we'll do a risk assessment the following year. So inevitably, there will be areas within the council that we'll never audit.
Yeah, that's okay. It's always difficult for me that you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know what's happening. Thanks for that. Are there any comments? You see the proposal, the internal audit plan 2022-23 being noted and approved by this committee. Happy to move and accept? Thank you. Item 15, internal audit annual report 2021-22.
Thank you, Chair. This is the last report from me. And this is looking back in terms of 21-22 as opposed to the plan for the current financial year. So what did we do and how did we do it? Ultimately, I've got to give an overall opinion, as Marion said, in terms of the state of the nation, to give you assurance that things were working well, things were operating well within the services, and that's collated from all the audit work which we undertake and the opinions which we undertake. It talks about the progress we made against the plan and also the performance of the team. So there's three elements to this particular annual report. Key one is the overall opinion, which if I can just take members to para 4 on page 201. Based on the opinions that we've issued during the year, I'm saying that the internal control environment has a reasonable level of assurance. And again, the details of that, in terms of the definition of that, has been already laid out this afternoon in my previous reports. And that is based on the opinions which we issued, which is in table 6. And I've identified that on the right-hand side for 21-22, in terms of good, reasonable, unsatisfactory and unsound, and compare them on a year-by-year basis over the last 4 years. Members hopefully will be pleased to know there were no unsound audit opinions issued in 21-22, and only a limited number of unsatisfactory opinions issued. As mentioned already, where we do have unsatisfactory or unsound opinions, we will follow that work up within a 12-month period and report back into committee. When we've done that in the past, generally there has been an improvement in the audit opinion. So of the two that were unsatisfactory, which were telephony and housing benefits, we'll be reporting the more detail of why we felt they were unsatisfactory into Governance and Audit Committee during the year, Chair. And as mentioned already, we do buy in an additional resource. We bought in an additional resource last year from an external agency, and they undertook 3 jobs on our behalf in terms of achieving the plan. In terms of adding value, we also ensure that where we have agreed an action plan and the managers have agreed to implement certain things to make improvements, we check and follow up the implementation of agreed management actions. And for 2021 finalised reports, the information we have in terms of the check-in is that 82% of all agreed management actions have been implemented. So hopefully that will give you some assurance that service managers do take us seriously. They do respond to the internal audit reports, and they do action things to make sure there's improvements within their own systems. We do get involved in the National Fraud Initiative, and we collate that within the team on behalf of the whole organisation. So in terms of performance of the team, overall, we achieved 71% of the plan, of the agreed plan, against a target of 82%, mainly because of lack of resources in the team and covering a long-term sickness from within the organisation, within the team. We did reach out for additional work with the external provider, but unfortunately they weren't in a position to provide us with additional days last year. So, in terms of the detail, Chair, if I can move members to Appendix A, that sets out the definition of our opinions. As I said, overall a reasonable opinion. Appendix B then lists the individual jobs which we've undertaken during the year and the corresponding opinion in terms of good, reasonable or unsatisfactory. Appendix C does list the jobs which we did not undertake during the year but were in the plan. As I said, they will be considered in terms of our risk assessment for the plan for 22-23. Then moving on to Appendix D, where we have non-audit opinion work, but where we feel we're adding value across the organisation by making sure there's responding to financial advice, making sure management actions have been implemented, and we provide financial regs training. In terms of the performance of the team, that's set out in Appendix E. As I mentioned, 71% of the plan complete. We held 11 training sessions, which is more than our target for 21-22. And getting reports out to service managers promptly is quite key for us. We're turning draft reports around in 5 days and finalising reports within 3 days. So given all that went on last year, Chair, with our reduced resources coming out of COVID, I think the team did exceptionally well to achieve 71% and gave me enough coverage in terms of the opinions which we issued to give an overall opinion to yourselves within the annual report. Happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Andrew. Are there any questions? Can I just give you two questions? One question. You raised telephony, which is now unsatisfactory, and I assume that was picked up in Q4, was it? Because obviously, or was it beforehand? But given telephony is important to citizens, and presumably telephony contact in this council, as the sort of recommendations, I don't know whether recommendations related to that, but has that matter been dealt with fairly urgently? It's not knowing the detail of the telephony issue is the issue, so I'm just wondering. Yeah, go on, thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. We'll go into a massive amount of detail with this. So that was to do with, it wasn't to do with the public contacting us or our ability to contact the public. It was to do with some breakdowns in control around the issuing of mobile phones during the pandemic. So we've accepted, the service area has accepted the internal audit findings on it, and there is a, I'm looking at Donna now because there are a series of management actions in place to rectify, which have rectified that situation.
No, thank you for that. It'd be useful sometimes if it isn't unsatisfactory to just know what the sort of substance is of that issue, so that we can, because if it was a customer-facing issue for me, that would be important. Understand about mobile phones and that as well.
Yeah, absolutely, Chair. And as part of our reporting process, we'll be bringing reports to the committee every 6 months on an update of unsatisfactory opinions with a bit more detail, a bit more meat on the bone in terms of giving you that information. Okay,
thank you, Andrew. Any questions? Any comments? Can I just say before I put the proposal to me, can you thank your team? Obviously they're working in a very difficult environment over the last 12 months during COVID, and that I should imagine there's a lot of homework in. But it's just not your team. I think the financial team and everyone should be congratulated in carrying out the amount of work they've done for this authority in very difficult circumstances. Clearly we're in a different world moving forward, but I don't think we need to underestimate the commitment of the staff of this council in undertaking the roles they need to undertake. So if you could thank certainly the financial team and the auditors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Appreciate that.
Okay. You've got the proposal there, the annual internal audit report 2021-22 and the overall audit opinion being noted and endorsed. Someone move? All in favour? Thank you. Item 16 is the work programme. You, Gareth, is it?
Well, it's just for information, Chair. This is your work programme for the next 12 months, populated with the recurring items that we know will come up, and when we know they will come up. So as you'll see, you meet every 2 months generally, and generally you would meet at 5 o'clock in the evening. Now, whether you want to revisit that, in terms of something that Councillor Mogford raised earlier, it's up to you in terms of your meeting times. But yes, generally we would programme the meetings every 2 months.
Thank you. Any comments? Obviously, we've got Councillor Mogford raised the issue about the timing of the meeting. It's currently down for 5 p.m. Councillor Mogford, do you have a question on that?
No, I'm quite happy with the timings. I did raise it earlier just to flag it up that we have to be mindful that we need to make sure that everybody can attend.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Mogford. So we're asked to endorse the proposed schedule, confirm the list of people it would like to invite for each item, and indicate whether any additional research is required. Obviously, that will come up at each committee, really, whether or not we want to call someone in or invite someone. So obviously we can think about that at next meeting. The only issue I've got is I won't be here on the 28th of July. I'm on annual holiday, so my apologies. So, Don, it'll be over to you. Well done. So, happy to endorse the schedule? Oh, yes, Myron?
Chair, only a correction from me. In your next meeting, you'll be looking at the statements of accounts for 21-22, not 2021, as is shown there.
That's okay.
That'd be a very long process, wouldn't it? So that's just a small correction.
No, that's no problem. Everyone happy? Councillor Harris, I see you put your hand up. Thank you. Okay, that's that. And then date of next meeting is the 28th of July, 5 o'clock, hybrid meeting in the Council Chamber. Can I thank everyone for attending this evening? Gareth and the staff, thank you very much again for supporting, and the comments I made in regards to finance and the audit team go to yourselves as well, because there's a lot of work goes in. I don't think people understand sometimes. So thank you all, and good night. The meeting is now closed.